Well, we're officially 3 videos into this channel, and you've listened to me rant about the state of Broadway, bad book writing, and most importantly, Bono. But it hit me that you probably have no idea who I am. Now, I've been hesitant to make a video like this because I want the channel to be geared towards theater and the history of theater, and I felt that a video on me was extremely narcissistic. But I do know that it's important that I give you a little insight into who I am, especially because if you're watching this, then you're one of the first supporters I've really had on a YouTube channel. Now, over the past 3 videos, I've talked about what went wrong with Broadway flops, and I feel like I don't really have any authority to do that without talking about what went wrong with my own theater endeavors. So with that being said, this is the story of what went wrong with my college acting career. I started acting as soon as I could talk. I remember being 4 years old at my uncle's birthday party in 2000. I brought my family's camera out to film the festivities, but I couldn't just film the party. That's ridiculous. If it was going to be a real movie, it needed some previews. So I laid out 4 VHS tapes on the table and proceeded to film the covers while doing a voiceover. Now, I grew up in a town of 5,000 people, so I wasn't really able to start learning the craft of acting until high school, where I learned that they actually wrote books on the subject during a trip to Barnes & Noble that was 90 minutes away in 10th grade. By the time senior year came around, I knew that it was time to start looking for colleges to go to for training. I auditioned for numerous schools, but I finally got into one that stood out among the rest. The program was only 4 years old or so, and they auditioned all across the country, only accepting 12 people into their acting program. So it was tough to get in. I arrived at college full of optimism and anxious anticipation of what the school would hold for me. I was in the mix with people who had been acting professionally for years, taken numerous singing lessons, some of them even attending theater arts-based schools prior to college. Then, there was me. I had acted in a few high school plays, read a lot of acting books, and made over 200 horrible YouTube videos. Surprisingly though, the first semester was great. The acting classes dealt with teaching us basic acting techniques and getting us ready for the rest of the college training. It wasn't until the second semester that the questions of am I good enough for this started to seep in.
I need this towel, because it's a nice towel. And I'll need it to mop the floor with you. I didn't even take a shower before this. I just thought it would be a good prop. And I needed something to do with my hands.
Push-Up Palooza 2K15.
By the middle of that semester, I finally got a chance to try out the things I'd been learning in class in my first stage production. I was cast as Jason Willett in Rabbit Hole, a 17-year-old kid who carries the guilt of running over a 5-year-old child. And I was awful. I made a huge binder to get into character, researching all about what happened culturally in 2007, what his personality type was, where he lived, all of that stuff. Now don't get me wrong, research is important, but where I went wrong was I used the research as a crutch, as opposed to letting the research go and choosing to inhabit the role. My performance was stiff, and you could tell that I was thinking, who am I? Through all of my scenes, and that I wasn't listening to the other actors on stage. Following that production though, I found that question still following me. Who am I? As the training advanced, I could tell that I was making progress, but I could feel myself becoming less and less excited to go to class, and I was getting cast less. Part of it was due to my acting ability, but the other part came from my appearance, as horrible as it sounds. Now I'm 5'7", 120 pounds at the time, with the face of a 12-year-old. Not exactly brick and cat on a hot tin roof. It didn't help that this fact was constantly brought up in class. The teachers would always tell me that I needed to gain a couple of pounds, which resulted in me locking myself away in my room at night and gorging my face with chicken, rice, broccoli, protein shakes, you name it, only to lose more weight because my stomach would immediately reject it, and because I was burning it off so fast from the stress. I still have stomach issues to this day because of that. Soon, I just gave up. I still went to class, but every day was a struggle. I still researched all of my characters thoroughly, rehearsed for basically 3 hours a day, and kept pushing to make my acting ability the best it could be. In my third semester, I did a scene as Hal from Picnic, she cast against type, and I took an approach of turning him into a James Dean-style drifter. I worked tirelessly on perfecting the role and the scene, thinking that it would bring a spark in motivation and bring back the happiness that I had felt upon joining the program. I remember our final performance of the scene, and lucky for me, I had a partner who was equally as passionate to making the scene the best that we could, and we knocked it out of the park. But while I should have felt happy about this, it only lasted for about an hour, and soon I found myself in the same slump I was in before. I sat in the Artist Block Cafe alone after class, looking around at everyone there, and the question still running through my head of, who am I? Should acting be making me feel this way? And more importantly, was this really what I wanted to do? Growing up, I had always been the acting kid. In a small community, your passions typically become your labels. I felt that I had a responsibility to my town to follow through and become a working actor. I felt that I owed it to my parents, my grandparents, my friends, but I never stopped to consider what I owed to myself. Why was I here? Who was I really behind the label that I've been carrying with me for my whole life? I remember talking to my girlfriend at the time, who was also in the same acting cohort as me, and asking if she could see a difference in me when I would have to go to class or go to rehearsal. And she said she could definitely tell that it wasn't making me happy anymore. But I gave myself a year to stick with the acting program, knowing that if after the year was over and I still wasn't happy, I was gonna stop.
In middle school. Right? Middle school. We all been there, right?
When the next semester started, I looked over all the shows that we were doing for that year, and upon getting 5 pages into The Matchmaker by Thornton Wilder, where all the characters were in their 30s or older, I realized that there were no roles for me to be had. But instead of sitting back and coasting through the semester, I decided that I was sick of myself and other tremendous actors being overlooked because we didn't fit the traditional leading type. The group of us all banded together and created the Restless Observers, which would focus on casting against type with no set, no budget, and would allow the story to drive the show by taking away a lot of the technical elements, creating a bare-bones theater feeling. As we got closer to opening Slipping, I auditioned for Matchmaker as per the requirements of my degree, and shockingly, I got cast. A role that didn't show up until page 10 and was exactly my type found me. Barnaby Tucker. We opened our student production to a great reception, Matchmaker was a riot, and I ended up falling more in love with my girlfriend than I had ever been. Before I knew it, the year had passed, and looking back at all that had happened, something was still off. Trying to wrap my head around it, I started to think of what other characteristics I had besides actor. The days went by as this question kept racing through my head, but I continuously drew up blanks. I had been living in that label of the acting guy for 20 years, and I had cut myself off from experiencing other facets of life. I needed to breathe. I needed to live. I needed to find out who I was outside of the actor generalization. So, I quit. 20 years of acting and performing, and I just walked away. I remember saying in that moment that there was more to life that I needed to experience, and that being a working actor just wasn't what I wanted at the moment. And as bad as it sounds, I felt a huge weight lifted off of my shoulders. I wasn't living for someone else's approval for once. I had finally made a decision for me. Years of depression, self-doubt, and unhappiness, and finally, I stood up for myself and made a change. Sadly, on the last night of Matchmaker, my last ever show, on my last day in the program, my girlfriend and I broke up. Was it one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made? Absolutely. And I still regret it to this day. But at that point in time, it came down to my head being clouded with more family and friend pressure and treating the next phase of my life as a hard reset. And my priorities got out of whack. But that's a story for a beer at the bar. So anyway, I went on stage for Matchmaker, acted my heart out, and after it was done, I gathered up my things, walked out the backstage exit, and I was no longer an actor. The next semester, I started doing what I had always wanted to do. I got a marketing minor, I started a desk job at Northwestern Mutual, working 9 to 5. I gained 10 pounds from working out. I learned Spanish, made some great lifelong friends, and I ate so much Chili's. Now this went on for a year, until suddenly, I felt myself getting an itch to get back into theater. So, for my final semester, the tribe and I all got back together for one more all-student production, this time of The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. It was during this production and my return to theater that the dots slowly began to connect. I felt happy. And that's when I realized, of course, it wasn't theater that was making me depressed. It was acting in the program and institutionalizing the craft. The production was filled with highs and lows that could be a video of its own. But despite the odds, and 1 year later, we were able to pull it off with great success. Now, did a lot go wrong in college? Absolutely. There were many nights where I just lied awake in bed at 3 a.m., contemplating my existence and if I really had any place in this world. Am I upset that it happened, though? Not one bit. While it would have been so easy to just end it all, something kept pushing me through. And that something was the idea that, as bad as life seemed at the moment, it was all soon hopefully going to become a distant memory. And I shouldn't rob myself of the opportunity to slowly become the person that I want to be. I'd love to say that when I look back on college, I always had it all figured out and that I knew exactly who I was going to be, but that's a pipe dream in most cases. I look back on me in college and I see a self-conscious, egotistical, depressed shell of a human trying so desperately to be the person that he thought everyone else expected him to be. He hurt a lot of people, threw away so many chances to be happy, all because he didn't know who he was and didn't love himself. A burden that he often threw onto other people to try to solve that for him. But somewhere along the way, he slowly learned that if he truly wanted to be happy and to feel loved, it had to come from himself first. It couldn't come from someone else. Only once I loved myself would I be able to connect with others again. And now, having been alone for nearly 2 years, I don't know. I guess it's just nice to have that feeling of community again. Am I the ideal person that I want to be? Not yet. But I'm really happy that we're meeting now, and that you get to meet this version of me. I'm happy that the things going on in my brain can entertain, inform, and maybe even move you in some form or another. I guess what I'm really trying to say is I'm really happy to meet you.